My turn with the Kings. So for free agents, I already had Josh Hart. Would need to be a sign and trade unless they're clearing money. Which, by the way, you could probably list Richaun Holmes here because the max they can give him is about $11 million. Otherwise, they need to create cap space to re-sign him. What are you doing if you're them? One, do you think Richaun Holmes gets more than 11?
Yes,
So
easily.
do I. If you're the Kings, are you clearing cap space? And look, when you look at your books, it's not just get rid of Marvin Bagley. It's either get rid of him and DeLon Wright or get rid of Buddy Hield or get rid of Harrison Barnes while taking back minimal to no money in return. And I think that's where I'm like, I don't know what you do because I think Richaun Holmes is great, but as a Kings team, you're not great. So does it make sense to get off of talent just so that you can pay to retain talent that doesn't put you over the top? It's confusing.
I think it does here. If I were the Kings, I would look to make multiple of those moves. I think you can try to see what you can get for Bagley. You can try to move Harrison Barnes for a younger piece and some draft equity. You can move Buddy Hield for a player who has a more diversified skill set and really commit to building around Fox and Halliburton. It gives you a lot more flexibility. You can then use some of those pieces subsequently to flip them for bigger name players who are available. But this current roster isn't going to do much and doesn't have enough flexibility in its current state to make a huge jump up the ladder. Kristaps Porzingis is a name that really comes to mind here as a potential buy low-ish target. I would love to see him operating alongside Fox and Halliburton. It's a fit that makes a lot of sense, but I would still prioritize finding a way to get Richaun Holmes back because he's going to go for something around $18 million on an average annual value.
Wow, you might be higher on him than I am. I guess my problem then is, though, and I think people probably try to oversimplify the Kings situation. I don't think it's as easy as just telling them to blow it up. If they wanted to, because you have Halliburton and Fox, if you can go out and get a Pascal Siakam, and you're just going to go, we're going to go for it now, fine. I have Myles Turner listed as a trade target for them. I have Jonathan Isaac listed as a trade target for them. Kings fans hated, that commented on what I was talking about, hated the Jonathan Isaac idea for me. But if I'm them, I would do Bagley and number 9 and maybe something else for Jonathan Isaac if you know that he's healthy, and we haven't really gotten a ton of updates on his health status yet. So I'm not against them making the buy-in play. I think where it gets weird for me is that if you're going to pay Richaun Holmes, I feel like your other moves, aside from creating the money to retain him, need to be buy-in plays. And if you're getting rid of Hield and Barnes and making those trades where you're divesting players to get picks, cost-controlled prospects, more flexibility, I don't think that's a bad route for them. If they want to kind of reset, go with number 9, Halliburton and Fox, they shouldn't be afraid to do it because Halliburton's young. Fox is under contract for a long time. The West is tough. If you want to rebuild, I think Kings fans deserve something more than the sub-middle that they've been living in. It's just I don't know how Richaun Holmes fits into either of those two extremes because to afford him, you're kind of taking yourself out of a lot of the buy now plays. And then if you're getting rid of him, it makes the idea of buying hard so much less appealing because you don't have Richaun Holmes, who was he was the second best player on the Kings this year. And there were times where he was their most consistent player, I'll say. I think Fox ended the year as clearly their best player, but he was their most consistent player. So if you could get rid of Buddy Hield, if that's the
it's
move
baffling,
for me,
right?
Right. If you can get rid of Buddy Hield and keep him, then I think it opens up more stuff. But if you get into we're moving Harrison Barnes for this to cut salary, that's where I'm like, okay, well, now it feels like you're very much treading water. I think Buddy Hield is probably a lot easier to replace.
I think the only thing I would want to add there is Richaun Holmes is going to turn 28 in October, but he's a relatively young 28 because there isn't a significant injury history, and he's played so infrequently until the last 2 years that he doesn't have as much mileage as some other players who are at that current tier have because he was such a late bloomer. So I do think that your timeline is a little bit more extended than you would typically think when looking to re-sign a player of his age.
I think that's also fair. And look, it's not necessarily about the average annual value for me. It's what it takes for you to get there. And I think that's where it gets weird. Really quickly, I did have other.
But I want to be clear on that too, though. That when I'm saying move Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes, it's not just turn those into young guys and draft picks. I want to do that to create cap space, but then make a secondary transaction for a guy who fits better around that core. Like I don't think that you just make those moves and then wash your hands and say we're done here. I think that you make those moves intending to make a secondary move that diversifies the type of talent that you have in those spots, because Barnes has such limited upside and Hield is such a specialist that I just think that you need to invest those assets in something that fits better along the subsequent core of Holmes, Fox, and Halliburton.
Barnes is such a perfect fit for this team, though. I don't think he needs to have more upside. If you're going to pay Richaun Holmes $16 to $18 million a year, you should be fine with Harrison Barnes at a similar price point declining. That's why I think it's Buddy Hield is the most expendable for me. You could talk me into DeLon Wright, and
I would move Hield first too, especially because Barnes has the declining contract structure. Like he's ultimately going to make 20.3 this year and 18.4 next year.
So yeah, I think we're on the same page there. And this is probably whether you're getting rid of Richaun Holmes or keeping him, because you still do need other options at the 5. But Daniel Tice for this team, Nerlens Noel for this team, I think you might have already mentioned him. And then Kem Birch even. Just someone who's sneaky good. If anyone was paying attention to Orlando and then Toronto this year, Kem Birch played really well. He's undersized, but he scraps, and he's hinted at having a corner 3-pointer. So those rounded out my list for the Kings.